Now that we've linked up our style sheet, let's go ahead and set up some basic page properties for our page. The first thing we need to do is to give it a title. Right here in line 6 of our code where it says title opening tag, closing title tag, you're going to see an untitled document. Now we're going to change this to say something like your name. I'm just going to use my full name, and I'm going to call it portfolio. Now, by giving this a title, what this allows us to do, or allows a browser to do, is to put a name in a tab. So if you go to a browser like Safari or Firefox, up here in the top where you have a tab, that's where that title goes into. So you want to have a title in there, so that way when someone comes to your page, they can see your name in the tab. But equally as important, if not more important, is that the title tag is one of the best ways for a search engine to find your page. So it's really important that you do and name this pretty well if you're doing this for, like, say, a commercial site. For our purposes, we just want you to put your first and last name and then portfolio. Next, we're going to go ahead and start setting up some basic page properties for our site. And to do that, we're going to go into our CSS style sheet. So up here in the top, next to source code, toggle over to your portfolio main.css. And we're going to start writing some of your first CSS code. Now, the way we write CSS is very specific. We first type in a tag or an element or a selector. And a selector can be a tag, a selector can be an ID, or a selector can be a class, or a selector can be a combination of all three. And we'll get into that in just a minute, and you see what that means. And then followed by that selector, we open up a curly brace, and then inside that curly brace we have a property, and the property is signaled with a colon, and then after that we place in a value, and after that a semicolon goes in after the value. Okay, so our first selector or tag, if you will, that we're going to use is the asterisk. Now the asterisk is somewhat of a wildcard tag, and what this does is this pretty much selects all the elements within a page. And the reason why we're going to do this is so that we can clear the default padding and margin values on our page. Anytime we create a new HTML document, there is inherent default padding and margin values. And to make our lives easier, and so that we can control those padding and margin values, we're going to zero those out. Eventually we'll have to add some padding and margin values back in to certain elements, but this will give us a clean slate, so to speak, to start with. So I'm going to start off by typing in the asterisk, as I've just done, and I'm going to hit the space bar. And then next I'm going to open up a curly brace. And if you don't know where the curly brace is, it's right above the bracket. So you actually have to hit Shift and then hit the bracket key. And as soon as I open up my curly brace, I get some property values. Okay, the curly brace looks like that right in there, and I'll see if I can zoom in to show you what that means. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and hit the Enter key. Okay, and this is going to allow me to see my properties a lot easier. Sometimes it's actually makes it a little easier for people if we hit the return key once again and then hit the Shift right bracket or right curly brace key, and when we do that, it'll actually close this set of properties for the asterisk. This is a little bit nice in the sense that we don't forget to close that curly brace. However, you notice that our code hinting disappeared, so if I hit the Tab key because I want to start my property right after there, if I type in padding, my cheat sheet, so to speak, my code hinting isn't going to pop up. So I'm actually going to go ahead and space this back and delete back all the way through so that my code hinting, so my code hinting continues to pop open for me. So I'm going to type in the asterisk, open up my curly brace, hit the enter key, and then I'm going to type in padding, and you notice now that my code hinting is working. I can just select padding and hit the space bar and type in 0. And you'll notice that after I hit the return key, when I inserted padding, it automatically inserted the colon for me. Type in 0, and then after I type in 0, it's important that you hit the semicolon. You're going to notice that as we start to type in our code here, things will color code specifically for us. So selectors and curly braces are pink, properties are really dark blue, and then our colons and semicolons are pink, and then our values are a little bit brighter blue. As we get further along, these color coding tricks for us will help us make sure that we're typing in everything correctly. So after I type in my semicolon, hit the return key, and then type in margin, and you notice that our margin code hint pops up. Hit the enter key, and again it types in and finishes it out for us with the colon. Type in 0, semicolon, hit the enter key, and then close it out with a right curly brace. And if you've forgotten where the right curly brace is, it's the shift right bracket key. Okay, so there you go. You just wrote your first line of CSS code. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so our next piece that we need to do for our basic page properties is to set up some properties for the body. And so I'm going to hit the return key a couple of times. And what's cool about writing in code is that these white spaces, so right here I don't have anything in line 3. I'm not going to have anything in line 8. These white spaces don't affect anything. White space is essentially a way for us to space out some properties so it's easier to see and read, and it doesn't affect our overall design later on. Okay. The body is a tag, and if you recall, we talked a little bit about it before. The body is where all of the content of our page goes. So if you type in hello world and you want it to show up on your page, it has to go inside body. Okay, so everything, all of our content goes inside the body tag. So it's pretty much the whole entire page. So this is the reason why we're setting up some default font properties and a background color, because we want that to show up on for our whole entire page. So I type in body and I hit the left curly brace. Remember, it's the shift left bracket, and it opens up, and hit the enter key so it drops down a line there, and for some reason it left aligns it next to the body there. Just hit the tab button, and this will make it easier to read later on if you're using white space effectively. So you notice up here in the top with our asterisks, you see the selector on the very left hand side, and then you see all the properties and values tabbed in, so it makes it easier to read. Now that we have body and open up the curly brace and hit the return key, we're going to go ahead and enter in some font properties. Okay, so the first one is going to be font size. So we're going to type in font. Then you notice that as I type in FON, you're going to see a bunch of different property values. Font, font family, font size. And the one that we actually want to adjust right away is the font size. So I'm going to just use my arrow key and select font size. Now, if you elect to type all of this out by hand, you have to make sure that you type it correctly, exactly as it should be. So font hyphen size, and make sure everything's spelled correctly. Notice that when I selected the font size from the code hinting, it automatically filled it out for me. Hit the space bar, and we're going to type in 85% and then semicolon. And the reason why we're going to do that is because this actually sets us up for a better use of our font size. This is going to set up all of our font size to be slightly smaller than what is default, and this is more true to, say, like what you might see on a Word document. And then hit the return key, and we're going to type in font again, but this time we're going to choose a font type or font family. So I'm going to select font family from my code hint list. And you'll notice here that in Dreamweaver we only have a limited amount of options for fonts. And you also notice that each font list has 3 or 4 fonts that follow it. And this is the reason why. And this is not a Dreamweaver thing. This is just the way what we have to do in terms of web designers, and how fonts work on other people's computers. Because not every computer has the same fonts installed on their machines. If we choose, say we found a font online and we really liked it and we downloaded it, we couldn't just use that font and put it into our Dreamweaver document, because say someone were to go view that your site or your page, they wouldn't have the same type of font. Now CSS3 has given us the ability to download some cool fonts and do some cooler things, but by default these are the only font options that we have, and most of these fonts are pretty common on most computers nowadays. So the reason why they have lists of 3 or 4 though is if for some reason, say you wanted to select Lucida Grand here, and if someone was viewing your site and they did not have Lucida Grand downloaded on their computer, then the next available font would be selected, which would be Lucida Sans Code, and if they don't have that one, it would just be Lucida Sans, Deja Vu Sans, and then all the way down to Verdana, and then Sans Serif. So Sans Serif is just the most basic Sans Serif font, which would be downloaded on their computer. That might be Arial or something like that. So go ahead and select a font list that you like. I'm going to go with a sans serif font, so I'm actually going to go ahead and select this Lucida Grand font, and I'm going to hit return, and you should see that those listings of fonts out there for you. And then hit the semicolon. Okay, and if for some reason you can't see all that, it's probably because what's happening here, you see how my semicolon ended up down there, is because in my window it's not large enough. So if I collapse this icon here, it'll give me a little bit more room in my document window, and you'll see that the semicolon does end up at the end there. So if for some reason, say the line, you have a lot of big line of code here, and if it doesn't fit in your document window, it'll automatically drop it down, but it doesn't take up an actual line. So it just is an extension of that line running into it. Okay. Next, we want to go ahead and set up a default background color. So I'm going to hit the Enter key again, and I'm going to type in background. Now you'll notice that there are a lot of different options for background as well. One of those is just background. Right there, make sure you don't see backface visibility, because that's a pretty easy thing to do when you're typing in background. We could just select background color here, but the shorthand version is just background. So we're going to select just background, and notice that when I hit that, I get some options to go right after that, URL color. So I'm going to hit the space bar, and then I want to select color. Now what's new about Dreamweaver CC is that we have a much better or much more diverse color wheel to select from. We can still type in the hexadecimal code if we'd like, which is more web safe friendly color code options. And so for example, I can just type in the pound symbol, which is the signal for that this is a color. Okay, and if I type in 999, that is a medium gray. And if I do this in shorthand, I only need to type in 999, which is just 3 numbers. Long version, every color has actually 6 numbers to it. So the shorthand version is 3. The long version of this is 6 or 999999. But what the cool thing about new CSS features from CSS2 is that it allows us to shorten these down to just 3 instead of using all 6. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that with 3 9s and type in a semicolon and then hit the enter key and then shift my right bracket there and close that out with a right curly brace. Okay, so these are my default properties that I'm setting up for my page. If I want to see what this looks like, I just click over to design here in Dreamweaver, and all you should see right now is just a gray background. Click back over to code, and right now I'm in my CSS style sheet, so you see all that code right there. Okay, if you click over to source code, haven't done anything yet, haven't put anything in this page in terms of content or like text or anything like that, but all of my styling so far and all of the things that I've done have been using CSS. In the next chapter, in the next segment, we're going to start adding some layout forms or divs for our page.